There's actually the two things I've planned on talking about. One was as a child, being sexually abused often during 1 year of my life. And I never told anyone. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell my best friends. And I felt like if they knew, they'd think less of me. And I've always had a hang up on the idea of, even though I've taught it, I've thought, we are all children of Heavenly Father. We are a child of God. But I didn't feel it like for myself. I felt like I wasn't worthy. Then I had, met my future husband, and he was a nice guy. My grandmother loved him. It was like, oh, he's such a nice little guy, you know? And we had dated off and on 5 years. We got married, and right off the bat, I saw a horribly abusive, ugly side. And then other times, our life was beautiful. We were very active in the church. He was a member of the bishopric. He was a Silver Beaver recipient from the highest honor for Boy Scouts of America. He was well respected in his work and in just private life at church. But there was a whole different side at home, and we were so careful to keep that quiet.
When I was very young, I fell victim to grooming, and it was just like a snowball effect. It was one thing after another, and my family didn't really understand. They kind of tried to be there, but it was hard to open up about it. It had to do with one of a family friend member, so that was even more difficult because they saw one thing and I saw another. There were times where I didn't have a choice in the things that happened to me, or felt like I didn't have a choice in situations that I was in. It got to the point where I started keeping people at an arm's length because people don't understand. Even now, there's been people over the last few years even that when I've tried to open up, they disappear from my life. The first time I remember feeling alone, I was probably in like 5th grade. And that was the beginning of my parents' divorce. And a lot of kids go through divorce, so they were like, oh, it's no big deal, my parents got divorced too. But the difference was their parents got divorced because they just weren't in love anymore, whereas my parents got divorced because my father was abusive. Church was hard growing up. People saw my family and thought we were happy. You know, that picture perfect family. We were great at putting on a face. And that was really hard. But as far as my relationship with Christ, it's always been strong. But there was definitely a time where I kind of felt like I was a little forgotten about because of all of those things.
When I was younger, I experienced I've had some trauma, and I had very little value in myself and in my life. Because as a child, when you are put in a position where this happens and you're around and people think or see things and they don't do anything about it, you're thinking it's normal. And let alone if it's, you know, someone that's a family member or someone that's close. And if they're a figure of power, you're definitely, as a child, you're not going to think that that person is going to have any consequences, or let alone if they're going to believe you. So I didn't know there were bad choices. I didn't know I was being in a situation where I was being used, because at that point, you think that it's normal to be under that situation. You think that it's normal to be considered that way or talked to that way. So when I met my husband, I met a perfectly good gentleman. someone that respected me, someone that was able to see me for who I am, not for my body or the way I dressed. It was, he saw me, my soul. We got married, and he would always talk about the church, and we didn't go until my son was born. And that's when I started realizing that I didn't want my son to grow up without God.
I just thought the mom and the dad were supposed to love each other and get along and be a good example and of how to do that and how to love each other no matter what. And you're gonna make me cry so fast. That's straight to my heart. I know how old I was when they started really fighting, and the cops came over and took my mom out because she had hurt my dad or something, or gave him like a scratch, but he was like pushing her too, and she was so devastated that he would allow the cops to take her out in front of us. And I remember being in the living room with my siblings and just hearing them screaming and fighting, and you know, more than once, and it was just getting so sad and so scary. So then my dad and my mom split up, and he got an apartment, and I thought, you know, I was still processing it, but I thought it was kind of fun to go over there, and he had a hammock in the living room, and I thought that was fun to be in the hammock. But then he moved to Florida, and that wasn't too long. I don't know how long he was in the apartment, and then he was just so far away, and we didn't get to see him. But then my mom, in one, like a last-ditch effort to try and salvage their marriage, we lived in Florida with my dad for like a summer, and then they just started fighting again. So then my mom moved into a duplex, and we were, you know, and I again could look for the good in that and have fun with that. But I just remember crying my heart out in the shower, like bawling, and my mom has told me how hard that was for her to hear me. And I just would listen to music and just cry. And my dad would send me a postcard every now and then and be like, I'm sorry, or I'm gonna come, and then sometimes I'm sorry I couldn't come, or I just started dating super young, and I started, you know, just really looking, like I said, for family and friendships and boyfriends, and for my self-worth. I wanted to feel needed. I wanted to feel loved from anyone. I didn't even care who it was. So I became a real people pleaser. Remember looking at myself in the mirror and saying, you're gonna do anything. You're gonna try everything. And you're gonna do whatever anybody wants you to do. Because I think I felt like that's what you have to do to keep people in your life.
I grew up in an abusive home, and then got married pretty much right out of high school, also abusive. Got out of that early on, thank goodness. Went back to my parents' home. So it was just a cycle of one abuse to the next. And then I started dating a guy who had his own struggles and his own issues, had some heavy addictions and whatnot. But we clicked. And he was actually the one who treated me the most respectful. His friends were the friends that would party every weekend and whatnot. And so I would go to the parties, and occasionally I'd have a drink, but I wasn't a big drinker. And I remember he was actually heading back to jail. He was in and out of jail, and he was heading back to jail. I took his daughter out for ice cream or something a couple days after he went in. And on the way back to her house, she just said, "Joyce, I wish you could be my mom." And my heart sunk. It sunk so hard and so fast. And the initial thought was, I have no right to be your mom. I have no right to be anybody's mom. Like, what kind of life am I even living? And if you look at the grand scheme of things, I wasn't some huge sinner. I didn't break all the commandments and all the things. Like I wasn't that person. But there was enough that I knew I wasn't doing, that I needed to be better. It wasn't like my home life was a life I could turn to, and I wasn't really accepted at the home ward because my family botched that up real good. So I was talking to a friend, and she said, well, my dad's a bishop of a singles ward. Why don't you go there? And I just laughed, and I was like, a singles ward? Yeah, that's hilarious. I ended up at that church that her dad was that was the bishop of the singles ward. And I got to the door, and I couldn't open it. The bishop saw me, pulled me in his office, looked at me and said, why are you here? How do you answer that question when you have no idea why you're there? And that's what I told him. I have no idea. And he said, okay, let's set some goals. And I just wanted to walk and be like, I'm out, I'm done. And then he said, I want to see you in at least sacrament meeting every week. I don't care what you do with the rest of the meetings, but every week. And it was that moment that it was oh, I can do that. I can breathe. And I did, I breathed. Like it was like I let out this, didn't even realize I was holding my breath. And so I went the following week, ended up staying for all 3 meetings. Within a year, I started preparing to go to the temple. As I went through and got my endowments, the person who was being my escort, she like pricked her finger and was bleeding everywhere and had to go to the bathroom, which left me all alone in the first 5 minutes of the whole process. And my anxiety went through the roof and I couldn't breathe. And I remember feeling my grandma's arms around me in that moment of, you're okay, we're here. And this is a grandma that had passed on years and years and years before. And in that moment, I knew I was in the right place, doing what I needed to do. And it made all the difference in the world.
My 30th year of marriage. My son was going to come home from his mission that next week. And by accident, I discovered that my husband had been having a long-term affair with another lady. At that time, I was serving as Relief Society president. Serving as Relief Society president, I am so thankful for that calling that scared me to death. But I am so thankful that I had that calling to help me to learn to rely on the Spirit more, to follow promptings, to have inspiration. One day I went to the temple. In the celestial room, I heard a voice. And it said to me, do what you're supposed to do, and everything will be okay. And so I went on for a couple of weeks, and things were not improving. Went to the temple 2 weeks later, and while sitting in the celestial room, I had the same words come to me. Do what you're supposed to do, and everything will be okay. I knew what it meant, but how? I was afraid for my life sometimes. How was I going to get out without it being ugly? I followed the promptings I received. I was able to box up and remove from the home, and luckily my son had just gotten an apartment. He said he'd share with me. And I boxed up my most precious possessions, mainly photos and documents, and a few essentials to get by. And then I left before he knew I was going. I left my beautiful home, and everything Mood worked so hard for.
I was very concerned that I would never find somebody to accept my past and also be able to love me. And thankfully I did. But that's one of the things that I would love to tell people is just, you're never too far. You can always find your way back. You're not alone. And it's not easy, that process of coming back and finding your way. You get pummeled, and the adversary definitely fights against you because he doesn't want you to get back. And that was something that was hard, is it did get harder before it got easier. I actually am diagnosed with PTSD and anxiety due to these things that I went through. And some days that hits like a brick wall. And it's everything I can do just to hold on. And those days are hard for my kids. They can see that something's wrong, that I'm not on top of everything. I remember getting to a point in church where it was so hard to go because there were so many people and I wasn't really connecting with anybody. And I remember having this thought, like, why am I even coming here? Like, I have a relationship with Christ. I can learn these things at home. Why am I here? And there have been times where I've had to step out of Relief Society because it's gotten too much. And I had this very distinct thought that you're not coming for them, you're coming for you. So I had to come to terms with the fact that my spirit, my heart needed to be there to hear the lessons and the music and just be able to sit in a spiritual place.
I didn't get along with my sister. My older sister was super hard. She was going through her own trauma. We were very trauma bonded, her and I. And so we have a hard time aligning our energies because of it, I think. She was bullied a lot, and so I think she took it out of me. She bullied me. And I just remember from the youngest age only just wanting to be her friend, like, oh my gosh, this was my big sister. And so I became very ruthless and defensive with her, like, get away, get off of me. And with just, my house wasn't a safe space. It looked nice. I just did not feel comfortable at home. So I would always live in other places. My uncle, pothead, drinking, guitarist, skydiver, graphic designer, taught me graphic design, and I sang in a band with him. And yeah, we smoked together, but it was like, he was the first sense of family since my family broke. And I felt so close to, I felt that heavenly bit again, like in my life. So me and my friend just started noticing that I feel darkness over here and lightness over here, or I feel dark when I'm with this person or in this place. It was almost like this little glitch of my spiritual gifts, because I think everybody has spiritual gifts, started like coming back. And I was having dreams and I was writing music and I was like, we would experience the most amazing things.
It says, "But whoso shall offend one of these little ones, which believe in me, it were better for him that a millstone were hanged about his neck, and that he were drowned in the depths of the sea." Yeah. Woe unto the world because of the offenses. Yeah. Yes. I was able to say, he's going to be fair. He's not going to allow me to be around those people that have hurt me. And I'm going to leave it up to him. I'm not going to do or say or give any energy anymore. Because then if that's the case, then I'm tied to that person. And I'm constantly thinking about them, and that's not what I want to do. They don't deserve 1 minute of my time. They've already taken my childhood. Why give them 1 minute of my day? So it took me a long time to get to this place.
I opened up to my husband first, and then it was a couple years later where I realized, okay, I'm still dealing with these things. I need some more help. And that's when I went to therapy. There's a lot of people who still have such a stigma on it, like something's wrong with you if you need therapy. It's not the case. Honestly, probably most people need therapy. My therapist likes to call it just a tune-up. Like every car needs a tune-up at some point. Our brains do too. From my experience, it would have really helped if somebody had listened and accepted what I was saying and not made excuses for what had happened or what I was going through. Because sometimes just hearing a nice thought can pull someone away from the edge, and that's so important.
I still to this day, through any of my re-seeking, re-falling, or re-evaluating, I have not found anything brighter than Christ. Buddha gave me a beautiful example. Gandhi gave me a beautiful example. Mother Teresa, like all these people, so many amazing people in the world, none of them know me and my heart to my core. None of them have the science to actually feel exactly what I'm going through.
We were reading scriptures the other day, and it's something I just started, so don't think I'm amazing at this. We literally just started reading scriptures together as a family. And I asked a question, and for Abigail, my 7-year-old, to be able to say, this is the atonement, or Christ was crucified and then resurrected, as we're talking about Easter type stuff, and I was floored. It took me until my late 20s to understand the true meaning of Easter and what it is all about. It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful.
For sisters that have to live with it for so many years, for whatever the reason is, I just pray that someday they'll have the strength to do something about it, because it's very liberating. And it might take years, might take months, but it's there.
What would I want others to do? I have such a testimony that Heavenly Father loves us, that we are children of a Heavenly Father. I am a daughter of God, and He loves me and knows me personally. That is what I struggled with my whole life. But I don't have a doubt. And I haven't even told my grandchildren. But I would say, if you are ever abused, you are a victim. It was not your fault. Don't let it ruin your life and hurt you for all your years. Get out before something terrible happens, or your family's scarred with this. I have the support of my family and the love of them. And they were all behind me when I left. In fact, they were encouraging me. But if I hadn't have had those experiences in the temple, I don't think I ever would have. I feel like I've let a lot of people down. I feel like I should have been brave, but maybe others can learn. Maybe someone, just someone, will hear what I say, and it will make a difference. I have survived through the years with all the miracles and all the blessings and the support of so many good people that are out there. I just love the members of my ward. I love the youth. I am serving right now in Sunday school with kids I taught in primary. I love them dearly. And hope that it's not too late to help someone else.